Welcome, everybody, to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. Today, we're going to continue the talk with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, and we're going to begin with the first stage of treatment that I tend to bring people through. Now, last time, we went through an analogy of a dilapidated house and how you would fix it if you needed to repair it, because if you start to rip up a moldy carpet and replace it, but the windows are broken down and the roof is leaking, pretty soon it's going to get flooded again and you're kind of wasting your time. This is the frustration that a lot of people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue tend to feel because they do something that's supposed to be helping and it feels like it's going great, and then boom, pain comes back with a vengeance. This isn't because it's incurable, it's because the wrong strategy has been used. And people don't quite understand what the different types of pain are trying to tell them so that they can respond in turn. First step to repairing a house is to block water from entering the house. You would seal the roof and windows to maintain a barrier from the outer climate to prevent mold, insects, and small animals from coming in and doing further damage. To do this in the human body, we first work with the immune system. Regulating the immune system plays a crucial role in fibromyalgia pain management. Just imagine having the flu. The aches and pains follow a similar pattern due to the generalized immune response. Imagine the complete loss of energy, that fatigue, the stiff neck, the mental fogginess, and the lethargic nature. You just can't get out of bed, you don't want to. This is essentially what's happening with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. The stiff neck or frozen shoulder or swollen lymphatic tissue, the weak immune system, the chronic inflammation that's associated with rhinitis, tiredness, aches, and chills. The pain itself comes when the immune system perceives a pathogen. It responds with increased inflammatory cytokines, nitric oxide, and homocysteine levels. The increased nitric oxide around the areas of inflammation can cause muscle contraction, similar to the way that you might get a stiff neck with a fever. This muscle tension further limits lymphatic drainage. The restricted lymphatic drainage can contribute to challenges with water retention and swelling. When this happens, you will either see an absence of sweating or sweating along the back of the neck. This particular type of fibromyalgia pain wanders from place to place as nonspecific immunity tries to respond to the pathogen. When this mechanism plays a predominant role in the development of fibromyalgia, people experience pain that changes with temperature fluctuations. They also may look outside and see that it's cold and they don't want to go outside. This is an aversion to cold. It's because the body can't really deal with the temperature fluctuations without increasing inflammation. The pain also tends to be worse during allergy season or cold seasons, and the pain seems to linger in the joints and upper back. Key signs: stiff neck, possibly with frozen shoulder, swollen lymphatic tissue, chills, aches, and tiredness. So when people are having a multitude of pains, but they also are having this wandering pain, it is crucial that you address the wandering pain first and deal with the immune system. Otherwise, let's say that they have kind of a bruised pain, or let's say someone's dealing with, pain that's worse at night when the platelets are stickier, and you say, I'm going to increase circulation. And that'll get rid of that bruised feeling. That'll get rid of that platelet adhesion. But what happens if somebody who's immune compromised has a virus or bacteria trying to eat their way through the human body, and you increase circulation? You basically leave the gates wide open for them to come in. So it will decrease that kind of bruised pain, but then the wandering pain gets worse. The stiffness gets worse. The lethargy gets worse. Strategically, if you have wandering pain, stiffness in the neck, if you go out into the sun and find that you sneeze, start with this first. The treatment strategy is to induce sweating and stay warm. People with this kind of pain benefit from saunas and immune therapies. Lymphatic drainage massage has also been helpful in these cases. As an underlying strategy, we use plant-based therapies that have been shown to have regulatory actions on the immune system, nitric oxide, and water metabolism. To really alleviate the pain from this stage, it's essential to activate macrophages and regulate T cells, B cells, and natural killer cells. Antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal interventions can all be used so long as they don't cause any major distress to the gut microbiota. It's also important during this stage to regulate bowel movements and protect the liver and central nervous system. It's important to understand with this strategy what people do to screw it up. So, if you're having this kind of wandering pain, going from joint to joint, the stiffness in the neck, pain that's worse with temperature changes, immune fluctuations, one of the most devastating things you can do is to ice the back of your neck. People will say, oh, it numbs the pain. Yes, it does. But the effects on the immune system are really, really not great. As a result of this, people will often increase their pain levels in the long run. Now, someone may say, well, what about Wim Hof? What about the ice exposure? This kind of school uses a lot of breath work and really saturates the body in such a way as to be interrupting viral transcription, killing bacteria, killing fungi, and really increasing the body's metabolic activity before the cold exposure occurs. It's also best suited for men, and the reason for this is because men have more brown fat than women do. Generally speaking, the younger you are, the more brown fat you have, and men have more brown fat than women. People who are from very cold northern areas, Scandinavia, Inuit people, they tend to have more brown fat as an adaptation. What brown fat does is it converts both brown and white fat into heat. So in this way, they're able to use their body's natural thermostat to raise the internal temperature. If, by doing a breathing exercise, you can't even heat up your body, then this kind of cold exposure is definitely a no-no. What can be very helpful, though, is using a warm heating pad on the back of the neck and making sure that you're not stepping on a cold floor. In Asia, everybody wears slippers. If you walk in the house, shoes come off, slippers go on. And there have been times I'm in China, I just want to take a couple of steps without slippers, and people will say, no, don't do it. Because the temperature change, when it's rapid, when you're not ready for it, can cause challenges that your immune system needs to keep up with. If you're not sweating, if you're not actively running through the woods, then this presents another challenge that you definitely don't want if you're in an immune compromised state and if you're in chronic pain. When you're in these chronic pain states and the immune system has to kick into gear with generalized inflammation, that kicks up the inflammation in the joints and the pain. Your body is always repairing itself. It gears up inflammation and it gears it down. You may bend your arm just a little too quickly and your joint sustains very slight damage. It'll create a localized immune response to heal the elbow, and then that'll go down. When the immune system is off kilter, what happens is, let's say you've just extended the elbow a little too much, the inflammatory effects begin, which is important for the healing system. Macrophages also help to repair tissue. But then it doesn't go down. What happens isn't overnight healing. What happens instead is that the inflammation is actually doing more damage than it's helping. So understanding the inflammatory system and how it interferes and how it interrelates with the immune system is crucial. As even osteoarthritis has very strong overlap with immune factors, immune conditions. This has been known for many centuries in East Asia. People will say you want to avoid the cold and damp because it'll get into the joints and cause arthritis. Now, the cold and damp is probably not actually entering the physical joints, but the changes in the weather are going to influence the immune system, as well as when you're in the cold and damp, what lives in those conditions? Fungi. And those fungi come in and start to break down your system. They try to set up shop, especially if there's dead tissue that's laying around because your body's systems, your body's metabolism has gotten so far out of whack that there's dead tissue laying around for fungus to come and break down. Just as they're breaking down dead matter out in the woods, as the wind comes, and with it the moisture, inside those droplets are the fungi. And as that interacts with your body, they can get in and begin to rot you. And as you begin to rot, the body gives a generalized immune response, and with it, increases the levels of pain. When it comes to the immune system, there are different aspects to it. There's kind of the gut-based immune system, which we'll get into next, and the immune system that's circulating in our bloodstream that has to do with the lymphatic system. These are very linked, but basically you have the outer walls. If you think of a castle, you have the archers on the castle walls and you have more of the inner guard. The inner guards that are just inside of the castle wall, that would be more like the gut-based immune function. Whereas the circulating immune factors, those are like the archers on the wall. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that there are archers on the walls, that the drawbridge is up. These are, of course, entirely interrelated. You can't really separate them because the weather changes can influence your digestion, and your digestion can influence the smooth functioning of the immune system. Because these are so interrelated, the therapies that I tend to use actually address both. They address both the gut-based immune system as well as the lymph and the immune factors that are circulating in the blood. However, strategically for stage 1, the overall emphasis, say 70% of the emphasis, is more on the antiviral, antifungal, and antibacterial effects to make sure that any pathogens that are coming in are killed and that there's balance within the circulating immune system. Afterwards, the general focus goes toward the gut. However, there is still something left over to keep protecting the exterior, keep protecting the border, to make sure that you have this protective bubble so that everything inside is safe and secure and can really heal without having any problems. If you look at the way a butterfly becomes a butterfly, the caterpillar first covers itself in a cocoon. You can't go through this metamorphosis without a protective covering. Otherwise, you leave yourself exposed to be really easily eaten. Emotionally, working with the immune system also has very direct influence on the emotions. The lymphatic tissue itself goes up into the brain. This was discovered just a few years ago. And in Chinese medicine, it's long been understood that in enhancing your immune system, it also helps with your personal boundaries. When the immune system is out of whack, people will tend to cover themselves a little more. They may cross their arms. They may lean over a little bit. You can see it in the body language. It may be very easy for others to take advantage of them, for them to take more than they're giving. People with weakened immune systems are kind of too tired to care, and they're actively being eaten. It's very hard for them to push upward and outward and say, hey, stop it, leave me alone. They're already feeling pretty wrecked. Interestingly, when people are having this type of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, this kind of pain that's associated with the immune system, they tend to have dreams where they're either fighting or running from some kind of a zombie. And this is because the body is literally in a fight mode. It's like fight or flight because of the immune system. So sometimes there's the fight or flight response that happens because of the adrenal glands. In this case, the body just feels like it's under attack. And emotionally, that can really start to internalize into people to where they're saying, oh, it's okay if people hurt me or take too much from me, or it's okay if, because I deserve it. And you see this kind of cycle where, maybe they're in a very uncomfortable situation. And rather than say, hey, it's really too cold in here and now I'm sniffing and sneezing, they won't say anything. They won't use their voice to actively change their external environment. They'll prefer to adapt even as they become not that adaptable. Very often, when this is in place for a long time, people will begin to just start to shut down and lose hope. They lose their ability to fight back. They lose those killer instincts. They lose touch with their survival instincts. You'll often find their internal dialogue starts to become like, oh, you're hopeless. It'll never get better. And you can hear the sorrow in the voice. It'll be, well, I don't... And it's the sound of defeat. It's the sound of being overwhelmed. It's the sound of just giving up. If you watch the Discovery Channel, you see an animal pounce on another animal. A tiger is taking out some kind of antelope. There's a point at which the antelope just gives up. It's not fighting anymore. It's lost its fight. It's overwhelmed, and it's just allowing itself to become eaten. Many times when people have these immune imbalances, it is linked. I can't say which one is the cause, but I will say it's definitely linked with that resignation, the lack of willpower to continue fighting. I think many times with modern people, the temperature is pretty well controlled. We have access to warm clothing. I think a lot of times it starts emotionally, to where people say, it's okay if somebody does that to me. For whatever reason, they start to believe this. And then with that lack of self-care, oftentimes associated with adverse childhood incidents, it becomes okay that bacteria are eating them or that fungi are eating them, and the body will cause a little low-grade fever, a little bit of a low burn to kill it all off, but really they're dying alongside. The cells in their body are dying alongside the pathogenic cells. It all sounds very tragic, but once you get the chi moving up and out, by way of a sauna, by way of heating the back of the neck, by way of doing visualizations where a bubble is kind of pushing up and out, by way of doing activities like martial arts where you're really engaging with those killer instincts, and you can kind of feel that like a shiver go up the back of your neck. That's the way the dog's hair will stand on end. As that happens, as the blood circulation goes through the back of the neck, as it starts to engage the lymphatic system, as the nitric oxide begins to remove itself from being in a traffic jam state to being in a state of flow, that can move lymphatic tissue even without muscle squeezing. So we think, okay, to move lymph, you've got to be moving, you've got to be pumping iron and running. Not always the case. And this is why activities like Tai Chi and yoga and meditation can be so tremendously helpful for fibromyalgia. There are different Qigong exercises that are designed to move these gases, these gasotransmitters like nitric oxide, and in doing so, move that lymphatic tissue, which is so tremendously helpful for people with fibromyalgia. So with stage 1, we're dealing with the lymphatic system, we're dealing with the immune factors. I want to give you a visual just to take home and think about this. Imagine a fish tank. Everything is crystal clear in this fish tank. You have this nice little ecosystem going on. You have the bottom feeders and everything is great. And then the filter breaks down on that fish tank. Pretty soon, that water is going to become murky and disgusting. It's going to start rotting, and then the fish will die. When your lymphatic system stops flowing or starts flowing at a crawl, that's like the filter becoming overwhelmed and breaking down. Pretty soon the entire body becomes toxic. As a result, inflammation goes up in a generalized sense, and it seems like when you eat something new, oh no, that thing isn't pure organic. It's not pure enough, it's going to hurt me. Which is ironic when people say this because they're an actual human swamp. The body isn't able to eat away all that dead tissue, so it's just festering and rotting. This is why stage 1 is so crucial. The filter has to be on. Or we can use the analogy of the windows. You have to seal the windows. You have to make sure the lymphatic system is moving. Without this, nothing else is going to last. This is one of the first and most important stages. Also, inflammation signals sleep. Too much can keep you from sleeping, but you need just a little bit to help trigger that sensation, that kind of wave of heat, like, oh, and then you sink into your pillow and fall asleep. Well-regulated inflammation is essential. It's not everything, but it is an essential first step, is getting that immune system on point. It's important to remember that with this stage, viruses, bacteria, and fungal overgrowths are what are really contributing to the pain symptoms. Pathogens in your body sneak around trying to destroy you. Your body wants to fight back, but it can't find them, so it increases general inflammation and raises pain levels. The pathogenic bacteria hide. They even coat themselves in mucus for protection. This mucus is called a biofilm. When the inflammation goes down, they venture out and spread to a new location. It's crucial to use therapies which have been shown to protect against pathogens, dissolve biofilms, and help promote a balanced immune system. When this is in place, people report less temperature sensitivity and freedom from wandering pain within 2 to 3 weeks. Now, this doesn't mean that the sharp pain goes away or the dull pain goes away, but simply the wandering pain and also the tight pain around the neck will diminish or go away within 2 to 3 weeks. I tend to use a particular formula that regulates the immune system. It's antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal. It's not necessary for everybody. What I think is important to take away is that we look at the overall strategy and then flexibly use what we have on hand. I tend to combine this with another formula that actively increases lymphatic flow, reduces water retention, and is anti-inflammatory as well as analgesic to kill pain. These two formulas that I use work great with light lymphatic massage, acupuncture, and qigong. Remember, if you have wandering pain that goes from one joint to the next, pain that is associated with changes in temperature or changes with the weather, and pain that's associated with tightness in the neck, use sweating first. The overall theory, the overall idea you want to go with is sweating. You want qi to go up and out. You want to be breaking a light sweat, staying warm, staying comfortable. Just think about it the same way you might do home therapy for a fever. You want to get that fever to break. You want to stay bundled up, stay warm. Next week, we'll be covering another aspect of pain and exploring what the body is trying to tell us. Thanks again. This is Andrew Miles with Botanical Biohacking. Please remember to rate and review on Stitcher and iTunes. We love those 5-star reviews. They help other people to see this podcast. And also, please feel free to send a link to this podcast, refer it to your family and friends. This is how we keep the word out and we can help people to help themselves.